former immigration director who suffered multiple torture explains role in 2006 fuel coup. South African educationers subdued by the COVID-19 pandemic amid the rise of infections. Gambia government to provide funding for women gardeners, says President Barrow. This and more coming your way on The World Today. Hello, this is Africa TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin. I am Amadou Kante. Many thanks for joining us, and now the news in detail. And we begin with matters of the TRC because Gambia's former Director General of the Gambia Immigration Department, Tamsir Jansi, has been explaining his involvement in a 2006 coup plot that was later foiled. On Monday, Jansi testified at the Truth Commission, where he said he was arrested, tortured and charged with treason in relation to the 2006 foiled coup. Fatmata Kasim has more details of that in this report.
In 2006, a group of army officers led by Colonel Ndur Cham, the former chief of defense staff, were at an advanced stage in their plot to overthrow the government of Yahya Jammeh when their plan got leaked. Tamsir Jase, a former director of immigration services, was involved. He would later be charged with treason and jailed along with Aliou Job, the former accountant general, and one Omar Fall Keita, a marabout whose prosecutors said used spiritual powers to try to ensure that the plot was successful. A year before the coup in 2006, Jase was dismissed as Director of Immigration over the introduction of new national ID cards. He then went on to set up his own business, a restaurant. On Monday, Jase told the Truth Commission that Ndur Cham plotted to overthrow the Jammeh regime because he was unhappy with the arbitrary killings under the dictatorship.
So we continue the discussion, and I got to understand that his major concern was not the corruption, the incompetencies, and all those other things, but rather the killings that he knew about.
Killings by who?
Ray. Kan modon Ray? In my understanding of him, that were ordered by President Jammeh. And he felt he would be a victim. I asked him if there was any particular reason for him to think he would be a victim. He said, no, it's just the way things are. When you become a victim, it will be overnight. I didn't take him seriously, but he continued the conversation each time he comes to the restaurant. And I begin to understand that he meant what he was saying.
The Truth Commission heard from Jase that he had received a call from Ndur Cham a day before the coup on March 22, 2016, that an attempt was made to overthrow President Jammeh, and as far as he knew, it had failed and he needed help from him out of the country. Jase helped facilitate Ndur Cham's escape to Senegal and had personally driven him to the border.
He told me that he has been informed that he is to be arrested and executed. And he needed to leave the jurisdiction of the Gambia. He said he did not know of anybody else who could help him. But you.
Where was he at the time?
He was somewhere in Farato. And I told him, I serve in the United States military. When I am in the battlefield and a fellow soldier needs help, I am obligated to help. I will come pick you up. I will get you out. I'll come back and face the music. And I did.
Before his trial, Tamsir Jasseh was being held at the country's maximum security facility, the Mile 2 prison, and faced multiple torture at the headquarters of the National Intelligence Agency in Banjul. The Truth Commission had on Monday that those who tortured him were members of Jammeh's death squad, the Junglers. Jasseh was later convicted of concealment of treason and jailed for 20 years with hard labor, and spent 6 years in jail before he was released over a deal broke by American civil rights activist Reverend J.C. Jackson. With both U.S. and Gambian citizens, Jasseh was expelled from the country. He was taken out of his prison cell and flown to the United States overnight. With both U.S. and Gambian citizenship, Jasseh was expelled from the country. He was taken out of his prison cell and flown to the United States overnight. For iAfrica TV, I am Fatmata Kasim.
Gambia's former Immigration Department director there, of course, appeared before the commission to narrate his deal at the hands of the junglers or the NIA. Now, the commercial city of Lagos has become the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in Nigeria as the country continues to witness a rapid increase in new infections. Authorities have expressed their concern over the alarming situation, with the country said to be dealing with a COVID-19 variant similar to the one in the United Kingdom. The West African country is expecting COVID-19 vaccines in January, while outlining measures to contain the virus. Here are more details of that.
Nigeria recorded its highest infection rate in a single week to date this past week. Authorities are calling it the country's worst period since the outbreak of the virus.
Our TPR analysis shows that 16 out of every 100 tests carried out are positive. We are also seeing increasing transmission among younger people.
Our treatment centers are filling up. We're struggling to keep up. We're struggling to find the facilities to manage, the oxygen to manage. Every night we're faced with phone calls of patients desperate for care.
Infections began climbing in December, leading authorities to declare a second wave of the pandemic. Health authorities suspect a new variant of the virus detected in the UK could be partly responsible for the recent spike.
We suspect that this variant is already in Nigeria. It will be surprising if it is not, but we simply don't know yet. So what we are doing are collecting samples of recently diagnosed cases and working to do the sequencing that we need to do in order to verify if this variant exists in Nigeria or not.
The government has now placed tighter restrictions on passengers flying into the country from the UK and South Africa, which has detected separate variant of the virus. It's also reinstated some of the earlier restrictions it lifted.
The other challenge that we're facing, apart from the challenge of the outbreak, is an increasing outbreak of misinformation. Every day we receive broadcast messages on WhatsApp, people sending forth messages that are unsubstantiated and in fact wrong.
With the increasing number of infections, the government has ordered the reopening of isolation centers. The commercial capital Lagos is the epicenter of the outbreak in the country. Authorities here are increasing testing capacity and setting up oxygen sample sites for patients with severe cases.
An oxygen sample site is a permanent structure, and there are 10 of them across Lagos. So if you can't get to one of our isolation centers and you need oxygen, all you need to do is go to one of these centers and you can be managed there. We give you enough oxygen till you calm down. We start some treatment before we transfer you to an isolation center.
A COVID-19 vaccine is expected in January. In the meantime, the government is appealing to the public to comply with preventive measures.
From the report there in Nigeria, as the coronavirus pandemic continued to rise in the country, and now we come back home. Gambians were left without access to the internet for more than 10 hours on Friday, the 1st of January 2021. Internet users were left frustrated and outraged as mobile companies sent out text messages saying internet services will be disrupted due to issues with the Africa coast to Europe submarine cable. Here are more details of that in this report.
On Friday, the Gambia experienced the longest internet shutdown since 2016, when then President Yahya Jammeh ordered for a shutdown as he was losing the election. For more than 10 hours on New Year's Day, Gambians and residents of the country were left without access to the internet, a basic human right recognized by the United Nations. Many Gambians have expressed concern over the recent internet blackout, including human rights activist Madi Jabate, who have called on the National Assembly to summon relevant authorities to establish why the internet shut down. Internet shutdowns are a national security concern, according to Jabate, who is very active on social media platform Facebook. Many attribute the frequent internet discrepancies in the country to the lack of efficiency from the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, PURA, and the Ministry of Information. The Africa Coast to Europe ACE submarine cable is the Gambia's only internet gateway, which is owned and managed by the country's national telecommunications company Gamtel. In May 2013, the government began liberalizing gateway services by granting international data transmission license to private telecom operators. Details are vague as to how many new licenses have been issued, but the new administration has expressed willingness to further liberalize the sector, according to a 2009 Freedom on the Net report by Freedom House International.
Internet shutdown, of course, hits the Gambia on the 1st of January 2021. Now, Kenya, like many other African countries, is working on modalities to get COVID-19 vaccines, mainly from China, after the initial plans to the COVAX facility got delayed. Authorities have been worried as to the rapid surge of new cases in the East African country. The country's president has asked health authorities to search different choices of the COVID-19 vaccines. Let's have more details of that in this report.
The scramble for COVID-19 vaccines is taking shape even as countries globally enter a new phase in the pandemic response, that of vaccination. The race to inoculate millions of citizens with the life-saving jabs is on around the world. But Africa is lacking behind. Hopes of vaccines early enough have dimmed, with rich economies having already purchased millions of vials from Western producers. African countries have been pushed to the tail of the queue. But African countries such as Kenya have already smelt the coffee and are increasingly looking elsewhere to guarantee supply of COVID-19 vaccines.
Even as you talk about the Oxford, the AstraZeneca vaccine, we are also negotiating with the others as well, including the Sinopharm in China. We are looking at the Pfizer's. We are looking at all the other vaccines that have been approved.
Kenya was waiting for a vaccine to be delivered through the COVAX facility, a WHO-led project working largely with Western manufacturers. But as reported by Kenya Star newspaper, President Uhuru Kenyatta ordered the Ministry of Health to extend the search far east. The decision also welcomes the testing of a Chinese COVID-19 vaccine in Kenya. In Africa, only Morocco and Egypt are testing a Chinese vaccine candidate. The decision was made because the toll of coronavirus in Kenya is worsening.
We will not be relying only on one type of vaccine. The ideal thing to do is to use several so that you can increase also the chances of a higher efficacy.
Kenya believes that the timely supply of affordable and effective vials will not only cushion lives from the disease, but more significantly ameliorate the biting economic impact of COVID-19.
I'm cognizant of the fact that health interventions are critical to our fight against COVID-19.
Kenya is targeting to vaccinate at least 30% of the population at a cost of $110 million and has singled out priority groups.
We start with the healthcare workers because those are the first line. As soon as the first line workers, and the first line includes even people like the police, the healthcare workers, the teachers who are in schools, students and so on. So we have got a system which we have issued.
China appears to be the ultimate go-to place for Africa and developing countries in Asia and Latin America. Now, there are a number of reasons that makes Beijing a partner of choice in the global COVID-19 vaccine economics. The Chinese vaccine presents itself as being relatively affordable compared to Western alternatives. This makes sense for Africa at a time of unprecedented financial pressure. China has demonstrated its commitment to stand with Africa in the fight against the virus since the outbreak. Chinese experts were seconded to the continent to provide on-ground support to over 40 countries. This was followed by massive donations of essential commodities ranging from face masks, ventilators, testing kits, protective clothing, and medicines. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has from time to time reiterated the need for targeted international support that can enable developing economies to overcome the pandemic afflictions.
Kenyan authorities outlining measures to guarantee to the rollout COVID-19 vaccines. And from the report in Nairobi, Kenya, we will now take a break and come back shortly with the remainder of the stories. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
For the first time in the Gambia, your favorite GSM operator, Africell, is the first and only GSM operator to launch a brand new technology called the esim. The esim simply means you can use your phone without a SIM card. Do you have an iPhone 11, any of the iPhone X series, a Google Pixel 3, or any new phone that supports the e-technology? Then walk into any Africell customer care center and activate your eSIM today. With your virtual Africell SIM, you can use more than one number without having a physical SIM card in your phone. Enjoy this brand new technology for the first time in the Gambia, brought to you by Africell. eSIM, your phone without a SIM card. For more information, please call 111. Where Africell goes, nobody dares to follow.
Welcome back, and you're watching the World Today News Bulletin on Africa TV, and once again, many thanks for joining us. Now, farmers in the Gambia are generally affected by severe lack of finance and are using absolute tools. Women gardeners face a same problem, including a lack of access to water. But on Saturday, Gambia's President Adama Barrow told women gardeners that his government will provide funds to women gardeners across the country. Nesise has more details of that in this report.
The Gambia's horticultural sector is one of the most vital food production sectors of the country. But most of the people who work in these sectors, mostly women, lack the tools and money to ensure enough is produced. As a result, the country faces problems of food security as farmers generally struggle to meet the country's food supply demands. On Saturday, women in Brufut, a village in the Combo North district of the West Coast region, told President Adama Barrow about their concern over the poor condition of their gardens, including a lack of tools and water shortages. In response, President Barrow said that his government has secured up to $80 million to invest in various agriculture subsectors, including horticultural production.
We have $80 million which should be spent on the agricultural sector, and these gardens will be included. But I will also warn people, when all work is done and officially handed to the people, then they should be ready to manage them properly. How you should manage it is that the people working there should have an account where they can keep their profits. By doing this, you can maintain the garden for 100 years.
Saturday's Brufut meeting is part of President Barrow's ongoing annual Meet the People's Tour, a constitutional mandate to tour the nation and hear from citizens on development challenges and work towards addressing them.
Speaking to the youths of Brufut, Barrow promised that his government will build a standard football field. He also promises to provide funds for business development for the youths as part of his plans in 2021.
We have money for the youth who are ready to set up a business. This is also part of our plans in 2021. We already have the money and we are working on that. Very soon we will start registration where we will give them the money to start the business. We believe that our youth needs to work because they are the backbone of this nation. The positions we are holding today shall be occupied by our youth tomorrow. And if we don't work to help them today, then Gambia in the near future will not be as we want it to be.
More than 200,000 youths in the country are unemployed, according to the 2018 Labor Force Survey, most of whom do not have access to any means of support from the government. However, President Barrow said the youth should step up and work for their country. For iAfrica News, I am Daisy.
President Barrow there, of course, he says he'll provide funding for the Gambian women and youth as he continues his Meet the People's tour. Finally, to South Africa now, because the South African education system has been adversely hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, with the country recording more than 1 million coronavirus cases. More than 1,000 teachers were reported to be subdued by the pandemic, with 32 of them losing their lives within a week in one area. The country's teachers union has urged authorities to put into consideration the safety of pupils and teachers ahead of the reopening of schools. Here are more details of that in this report.
The COVID-19 pandemic has taken a huge toll on South Africa's education system. About 1,500 teachers have succumbed to the virus. In the past week alone, the virus claimed the lives of 32 teachers in one province.
That's a large number. It means that there will be some schools where several teachers will not be available, but it also means that there will be classrooms where there will be no teachers. So that to us is a huge concern. It is a looming crisis because we planned with these teachers in mind that they will be coming back to work. And when we finalized our admissions for the following year, the ratio was based on the number of teachers that we already have. And this number from just one reporting province is huge. It's actually shocking.
So we asked him if the teachers are losing their lives because the education department's COVID-19 protocols are basically failing them.
In fact, in school, the protocols are working. That's why after schools reopened, the numbers declined, which means schools contributed to the reduction of the infection rate. But the spike happened after schools closed because people in society, in their own homes, in the streets, there's no control. You go to a party, you go to a funeral, you go to other social activities.
Mhlanga says the disruptions to teaching will need a longer time frame to address.
If there are going to be any further disruptions, it means that it could take us and even longer, maybe 5 years even, to try and recover the loss just that would have resulted from a single year.
South Africa's 2020 academic calendar was revised at least twice to accommodate the changes that have been brought by the impact of the coronavirus. With less than a month before schools are due to reopen, Teacher Union SATU has appealed to the Education Department to ensure that pupils and teachers receive psychosocial support in order to deal with the deaths that have been brought on by COVID-19 pandemic.
What we did during the preparations for the reopening of schools when they were closed was to work with our NGO partners. We also worked with the Department of Social Development to provide us additional social workers, counselors who would come to school to provide support to our learners and our teachers.
South Africa has surpassed the 1 million mark of COVID-19 infections. The country is also currently battling a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The coronavirus pandemic there hitting the South African education system as teachers have been, of course, are losing their lives due to the pandemic. And with that, we finally bring this news bulletin to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, you can log on our website on africa.tv. But for now, though, many thanks for the privilege of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.